Welcome to this third workshop on building space workforce, workforce series sponsored by the Global Spaceport Alliance in cooperation with Spaceport America and sponsored by Jacobs. My name is Steve Wolfe. I'm Deputy Executive Director of the Global Spaceport Alliance, and I'm really glad that you're here with us today because we have an incredible program for you. Hey, but what a week we've had, haven't we? I mean, not the least of which was the flight of Virgin Galactic that ended just moments ago successfully. Boeing Starliner finally launched and made its way to the ISS, International Space Station. And how about that SpaceX Starship 4 experimental launch? They gave us such an exciting experience on Thursday. In that spirit of entrepreneurship, that's what this third workshop is going to be all about. It's titled Entrepreneurship and Business Planning for Startups. Got an incredible panel lined up for you. I want to now turn this program over to Alice Carruth, who is a longtime friend of the Global Spaceport Alliance and a producer of T-Minus Daily, presented by N2K. So Alice, with that, I'll turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve. And it's my pleasure to be able to talk to you all about the business side of things in the space industry. We focus so much on this incredible achievements that are done by the Rocketeers, and they do an amazing job when it comes to launching spaceships, Starliners, and Virgin Galactic spaceplane, as Steve just mentioned this week. But I just want to focus at the moment on how the business of space works, because it's without those people that work on raising the funds, working on business plans, thinking about how they market their business, then we wouldn't be here today talking about the incredible achievements they've got. And we've got an incredible panel to talk about this. Stephan Reckie is with the Global Entrepreneurship Network. We've got Benjamin coming in from the Arizona Spaceport Alliance, Casie DeRaad coming in from NewSpace Nexxus, and Izzy House, who's the current marketing director of the Global Spaceport Alliance. I want to start with Stephan, because Stephan and I have been going back for a few years talking about entrepreneurship when it comes to the space industry, and what Jen is doing is an incredible opportunity for people to get involved in entrepreneurship around the globe. Stephan, I'm going to get you introduce yourself and talk through the program that you do with Jen over it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice, and thank you to the Global Spaceport Alliance for this opportunity to talk about what I'm passionate about and space entrepreneurship. I have just a couple of minutes, and I'm going to blow through a bunch of slides. And again, you can review the slides to get hold of me as well. Basically, I'm going to be talking about astropreneurship. So adding the astro part to entrepreneurship, basically someone taking risks, doing a business in space, putting together risky businesses, and what it takes to be an entrepreneur, creativity, resilience, and most importantly, the business sense. There's a slide here that talks about at least 12 things you can do in space in terms of verticals. And then on this slide, you have 10 more things that are nearer term, and then future stuff. These are all part of a longer presentation that I give globally. But it's really important for us to really realize that space is all around us. Our daily life depends on space and things that were built in space. And here you see a slide of the things that were called spin-offs from things created for space that we're using on Earth. And it's full of opportunities, not just for rocket scientists, but for any type of a profession. Any type of profession on Earth eventually will have a parallel or similar approach in space. The impact to space is tremendous. The overview effect applies to astropreneurship or entrepreneurship. And in particular, just a couple of words about the Global Entrepreneurship Network. We're based out of Washington, D.C., and we operate in 200 countries. And the idea here is to put together and share best practices for entrepreneurship. And the cool thing is, for the past 7 years, I've been the executive director of Gen Space, taking space as a location, not a vertical, but applying all the basic principles of entrepreneurship to make people successful and knowledgeable about doing business in space. We also have an Entrepreneurs World Cup, and that last year had 400,000 applicants. And out of the 400,000 applicants, we picked 5 companies out of the top 100 globally to come to Riyadh for the finals. Pretty exciting. So Gen Space really does 3 things. We connect, advise, and inspire the next generation workforce. We're global. We have advisors all around the world, every continent. And my goal is to put together entrepreneurship off planet. So I look forward to adding something for the moon here, eventually Mars and Venus. And we talk to astropreneurs, we talk to universities, we talk to government agencies, academics, and mostly investors as well. So we educate investors about opportunities. That said, I am done. I took my 5 minutes. I appreciate it. And I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Stephan, that was like 3 minutes. You did a great job of really condensing down what this incredible group does at Gen. And I hope to be able to throw some great questions to you about how you can set yourself up as an entrepreneur in this industry. So it's my pleasure to then introduce my next person to speak, which is Casie Anglada DeRaad, who's a good friend of mine who runs NewSpace Nexxus. Please tell us a little bit more about what your organization does, Casie.
Okay, thank you, Alice, and thank you to the Global Spaceport Alliance. And I want to hear more about this Gen Space. That was exciting to see that. Casie Anglada DeRaad, I started out with working with a long career with the Air Force, working on satellite electronic systems, running then later in my Air Force career running partnerships, and I saw a need for helping a lot of the small space companies to get to federal resources, be able to understand how to work together. And so 2019, we started NewSpace New Mexico. You can see there, but we just rebranded to NewSpace Nexxus as we do a lot of efforts nationally. NewSpace Nexxus is a nonprofit put together where our vision is to grow the space industry from New Mexico for the nation. And we do, we have a lot of programs in place to help the small and medium company basically get, all of our programming is to help these companies get to the right resources that they need, including workforce. So you'll see just a couple of things that we do. So we were founded in 2019. And we like to say we unite and ignite. So the first part is uniting. We do a number of connecting happy hours. We have a conference that we run. We try and just break down those silos to help the workforce, the companies get together. And then as far as igniting, we try to help companies get to the right resources they need so that they could collaborate, they could get to workforce, they could get to resources they need so that they can accelerate their pace of innovation. So I wanted to just share also that where we are here in New Mexico, we like to say it's sort of the heart of Space Valley. For all of you out there that want to know different resources, we really try and kind of connect all of these organizations. In New Mexico, we have 3 Space Force organizations. We have the Space Valley Coalition, and we have 2 DOE laboratories. We have White Sands Missile Range, and of course, Spaceport America, one of the best space organizations here. And then we track with the 150 space companies in New Mexico and growing. So just want to tell you, that's where we're doing, our connecting. I wanted to share one of our programs. I'm not going to go through a lot, but one of our programs is a NewSpace Alliance. And this is where we tried to, unite and connect all the companies. It's where industry, government, academia can join. We'd love for you to join if, corporate entity, and global is coming soon, but the individual, if you want to join the individual, you'd go to newspacenexxus.org. And that is where we're going to start using the individual alliance members, where the companies, if they have job opportunities, will be able to sort of post it and it'll go to that individual alliance. So I'd love for you to join. And just to show you, the alliance members are national, mostly in New Mexico, but a lot outside of New Mexico. Numbers of companies, a lot of them are just zero, small companies, small entrepreneurial companies, 0 to 10 employees. Here are the space companies, the type of space companies we work with within the NewSpace Alliance. And so there's a lot of opportunity. I just wanted to share one of our other programs is what we're calling Pathways to the Stars. And we are putting together, in partnership with space industry, a full connecting pathway from early childhood programs all the way to apprenticeships, and internships, and then eventually job placement, where, like I said, we're going to try and connect those individual members in the NewSpace Alliance to those job opportunities. We'd love to tell you more. And I just wanted to say, then finally, we have sort of an incubator-like program called the NewSpace Igniter. And this is where we have been working, we've worked with about 40 companies so far in the last year and a half. And we bring the companies in, really help them to develop their product, and then showcase them to the funding sources. And so we have a lot of great companies to work with in there. And then finally, we have open shared prototyping center, but also can have events, and we call it the NewSpace Launchpad. Anyone wanting to come join us and use the Launchpad when you start your entrepreneurial company, you could come and set up there. So all I want to say is join us our NewSpace Alliance through our workshops, come work at the Launchpad, be a part of the Igniter, or partner with us on that Pathways to the Stars.
A lot there for people to unpack about the new Space Nexxus. And I'm hoping we can throw some more questions to your way about how people build up their business plan and move forward with the things that you're doing to help set them up for success, which I think is really great. I'm next going to introduce Benjamin Hernandez, who's from the Arizona Spaceport Alliance. So we're staying in that Southwest region of the US, but what they're doing is as helping companies as well establish themselves in the region. So Benjamin, I'd love for you to talk us through exactly what you do for the Arizona Spaceport Alliance.
Sure. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's an honor to try to help new entrepreneurs and new businesses come up, whether they're in Arizona or anywhere else. My name is Benjamin Hernandez. I am a founding member of the Arizona Spaceport Alliance. We are a local nonprofit effort here in Phoenix, Arizona, whose sole purpose at first was to convince a municipality to apply for the launch site operator's license. Try to get the FAA to license a spaceport here in Arizona. We started off with several sites. We have several sites now, and the two lists are very different. And the reason they're very different is because these are very dynamic discussions. It takes a lot of adaptability to kind of work with a site and work with the players at that site, the decision makers, and these things are always changing. And the reason that's applicable to today's discussion in entrepreneurship is because that's what entrepreneurship is. It's this ability to kind of get your idea across the finish line when all these roadblocks are being thrown in front of you. And I think everyone here on the panel will agree that there's no secrets in business. It's hard work, it's dedication, it's kind of getting together with the right team and hitting those milestones and getting to the finish line. My day-to-day life is commercial real estate. So my clients are companies that are trying to occupy space, but I don't represent landlords or developers. So my life is only with the companies. And what that means is I have to take whatever problems that they are encountering at that time, and I have to figure out a solution for them and help them out. If it requires an attorney, I do that. If it requires an accountant, I do that. If it requires an investor, I do that. And I work with several of these organizations that are in our sphere in aerospace, because quite frankly, my focus is aerospace companies. One of the things that I will say is that since we have UMA starting the process last year in 2023, I have focused more of my effort in workforce development. And what that means is that I focus the 5 elements of spaceport development to my clients. And the 5 elements are, you need the legal permissibility to do this, whether it's a license or whether it's the correct contract or the right zoning. You have to be able to do what it is that you want to do to make your business successful. The next element is financial, right? You have to set up a bank account because you don't want to make it hard for people to give you money if you're an entrepreneur. You want to make sure that you have your wire transfer set up, your Venmo, if you need a key card, your key card swiper, all of those elements that it takes to really not make it hard to conduct your business. The third thing is design. Who's going to design it and where are they going to design it? Do you have the right team in place, or are you yourself doing all the design? The fourth element would be the market. You can have a great idea. You might even have an investor that thinks it's a great idea, but if the market doesn't support your idea, you're not going to get very far because you just don't have the end users to support your idea. And the last element is the physical construction, whether it's a product or a service. You need the materials, you need the machines, you need the skill set. And if it's some sort of service, then you need the data, and you need the computer or the software, and you need the skill set. So what I do is I try to bring those 5 elements together to kind of speed through, fast track your process to get you to a garage, incubator space, and often to your own business as quickly as I can. And I work with all these organizations to do that, mostly here in Arizona, but I do work internationally. One of the things that I do is I try to get these local spaceport locations to partner with, these international spaceports through the Global Spaceport Alliance. I think that that's about it for me. I've switched to workforce development. I'm working out those programs, and I'm very much looking forward to speaking with everyone here on the panel to see how we do better.
Thank you, Benjamin. I really appreciate that. And I love the fact that Benjamin just covered a lot of the different career opportunities there are in space. People don't think about real estate dealing with aerospace. People don't think about law dealing with aerospace or finance. These are all careers that all contribute to the aerospace industry. And I love the fact that we're going to cover a lot of those today in this presentation panel. So that then brings me to our last panelist, which is Izzy House, the Marketing Director of the Global Spaceport Alliance. Izzy has worked with a lot of space startups over the years and has really helped them figure out their branding and identity. So Izzy, I'd love you to talk us through what it is you want to talk through today.
All right. Thank you, Alice. Casie talked about incubators. Well, I started my career in an incubator. When I was in college, I started my marketing firm in San Diego, and I started it in an environmental technology incubator. And within that particular incubator, there was all kinds of scientists and inventors that were developing world-changing technology. Most of them did not believe in marketing. In fact, they were of the mind that if they created something that was world-saving, that the market would come to them, that they would just fall in their lap. Well, that did not happen. And the basic thing is you cannot change the world if no one knows you exist. So I ended up graduating from the incubator, and I had a brick and mortar in Sereno Valley, San Diego. And I worked with many small businesses, startups, corporations, organizations in San Diego and in Mexico. One of the highlights that I have with the customers that I dealt with was Innocom. They interviewed several different marketing firms and settled on me and one other firm. We created the branding, and whoever won the branding was going to go forward with this company. That solution that I created was the one they went with. And then they were able to take that brand and they sold their product, their technology, and their company. You know them as Bluetooth. So that was one of my claim to fames in there. I sold that marketing firm, and then I headed to Kentucky, where I opened up another marketing firm, and I had that one with a partner for about 12 years. Family responsibilities required some downsizing and a pivot. Fast forward, I was getting my master's degree, and I decided to go into the space industry. And one of the very first events I attended was the entrepreneur event with Spacecom in Houston. And that's where I met my fellow panelists, Stephan and Benjamin. As I dove into the industry, I saw the same things that I saw with the incubator. It was geniuses and very smart people that were creating things that didn't believe in marketing and didn't have marketing, because for decades, the grant-based business model worked fine. So they didn't require much marketing. In that particular business model, all you had to do was woo NASA and maybe one or two investors. But that business model changed in about 2015 as the 2015 Space Act opened the door for commercial space initiatives. Now competition is king, as it reigns from over 80 countries that are developing their space programs, and it's a competitive market as of now. A lot of the companies did not know how to market. They didn't know what this thing was. They haven't had to deal with it. And they were all of a sudden going against companies that have been in marketing for a long time. So this is when I created my first book, Space Marketing. And it is kind of a guide for small businesses. It talks about what marketing is and how do you implement it. It starts off with the basics like your logo, your color, your brand's personality, and then it goes into strategies and tactics. And it concludes with how to hire talent. Now, throughout the book, I have a fake company that I use. It's called Rockets Are Us because it can't have anybody that's going to be real. When we talk about a strategy or tactic, we look at real world case studies, but then I apply that tactic or strategy to the Rockets R Us so you can see how it goes behind the scenes. I was asked to write the second book, which has to do with spaceports. I love spaceports, and I feel very fortunate to work with Global Spaceport Alliance right now. During that time, we were just coming out of COVID, and getting one more Zoom call was like pulling teeth. So I created a podcast to get the interviews for that book. And the next month I will celebrate 2 years podcasting, which I am just amazed that I enjoy that. And that's for small businesses. So that is a little bit about me and how that all came to be.
Perfect. And I will give a good plug to Izzy's podcast. It's called Marketing Space. It's a really good opportunity to get in-depth knowledge for people about how to market the space industry, because it's a really great opportunity. But this brings me to kind of our Q&A opportunities to throw around to everybody here on the panel. I'd really love to start with Stephan. Entrepreneurship is hard. It's hard in every industry. And I think at the moment, people are concerned, particularly with finance when it comes to the space industry. Can you share the knowledge with people that are listening here today? How difficult is it to start your own business in space? And is there any funding opportunities available to you?
Well, absolutely. So space is actually getting easier to access, cheaper and easier to access, right? The big turnaround was the reusability of rockets. So with that, you can get stuff to space, meaning up and down mass. So it's the basic principles in our whole basic tenet is the basic principles of space entrepreneurship are the same as if being an entrepreneur on Earth, but it was the access to space. So given that the access to space is getting cheaper and easier, and also the other important stakeholder are the investors. The investors are getting more knowledgeable and more aware that they can invest in space. You no longer have to be a billionaire to invest in a space company or your own space company. You can do that, and you don't have to invest in a whole rocket. You can invest in pieces and parts. It's similar to the gold rush. It was the people that are making the picks and shovels that really made the money. So you don't have to have the gold mine anymore.
I think that's a really succinct way of being able to say it. You know, there is opportunity out there. You've just got to go and find it. And I suppose that really brings me to my next question, which I'm going to throw to Casie, about business opportunities out there in the space industry. It feels like it's saturated. It feels like it's completely dominated at the moment by SpaceX. But I know you're working with companies that go all the way through from production, manufacturing to the final launch event. What opportunities are you seeing out there in the space industry?
Oh, there are so many. I think a lot of times with the aerospace industry, a lot of focus on the workforce is STEM, but and that is a definite need for a lot of these companies that are, manufacturing satellites or building some of the components that would go in a space system. But there's also just many opportunities in, like Izzy was saying, where it's like finance. Actually, sorry, it was Ben that was saying that, where finance, there's lawyers, there's business folks, program managers, there's all kinds of opportunities, and the space is really big. I think everyone thinks of a launch, launch is space, but there's satellite manufacturers, there's services, there's a lot of software developers that are, software applications to be able to take advantage of the services. Like one of our companies is they went through an accelerator, and they won this contest called Hyperspace Challenge, where they took their AI system that they use to detect cancer anomalies, and they changed it to take the data from a satellite and, the health of the satellite telemetry and thermal, and they can predict errors. So, I mean, that's just like kind of a whole different view of a space company, right? The company is RS-21. Anyway, so it's just, there's many, many, many applications. I think on the one slide I had put where our alliance companies, we have research, spacecraft, applications and software, operations, ground stations, launch. So, and then space tourism, as we have our Virgin Galactic here in New Mexico.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw a question to you, and I'm going to then throw it to Benjamin, because both states, New Mexico and Arizona, are currently looking at space tourism as a new area of development. And we've got a really great question in the chat, which I'll throw to both of you, and I'll get Casie to answer first, then I'll throw it over to Benjamin a bit further. The question says, is it possible to go in depth on space tourism and how to establish such a company? Which is a really difficult question to tackle when I know neither of you are particularly running space tourism companies, but from your experience of dealing with space tourism in your state, how difficult is it to really establish that? And I'll start with Casie, then we'll talk a little bit more about the ballooning that's going on in Arizona.
Well, I think that Virgin Galactic is doing really well with it, but I know there's just been issues they have to, I think, like, and I'm not exactly familiar right to the details, but like they had to go get legislation that people can take on their own. They know that it's a risk to go fly in a spaceship, and it's okay. So there's a lot of regulations that the company has had to deal with. But it's kind of cool because, like, even today they launched, I was supposed to be there this morning and ended up having to change plans. They had a successful launch today, and I know quite a few folks that went to see it.
And I think what your point about state support is so important. I know there's been a lot that's gone through the state of New Mexico to support their operations going on in New Mexico. But what's going on in Arizona, Benjamin? Can you talk us through what's going on with your companies over there? Because I think you've got World Vision that's establishing itself in Arizona, correct?
Yeah, Worldview is the company that's doing the spaceport launches with a balloon and the 8 wonders of the world idea. Yeah, but realistically, we don't even have to get that much into an actual tourism company that has their own vehicles. If we're thinking just at the base level, and you really want to be in this industry, you can develop almost like a travel agency type company that focuses on the guys who already have the vehicles. You can be a broker for that element. And now you're just talking about relationships and learning the players and getting together with them. And as you go through this process, I promise you're going to find other opportunities because you're going to meet the investors. I mean, that's the long and the short of it, is that as we get more and more opportunities to do space tourism, from the balloon to the spaceship at Virgin Galactic to the moon, those opportunities are going to balloon out. And it's the people who have the relationships in the beginning or as early as possible, or just have the luck or the wherewithal. What does it come down to? Discipline and work ethic, and as you do something simple, you can get to something more diverse. I think Izzy's a big example of that. You start with the basics. Everyone needs more. Like my partner says, Karen McBean, there's space and space for everyone. So, don't think about what you can't do. Think about what you're already kind of good at. You already studied it in college. You already have the degree. Apply it. It's relationships at the end of the day. You get relationships in aerospace, you can apply your education.
Networking as well. And I was going to say, space tourism is so much more than just launch. And I think that you set up Izzy perfectly there, because I know she's been part of the Space Tourism Conference, and they cover the whole gamut when it comes to space tourism, because it's not just that launch area. We think of that, the inverted triangle, correct, Izzy, when we're talking about museums being part of space tourism, about workshops, festivals being part of space tourism. Then there's the multiple different levels of launch, going from 0G all the way up to the SpaceX launches. Can you talk us through a little bit about what space tourism means and what kind of companies you're seeing establish themselves and moving through the business right now?
Well, space tourism includes more than just the vehicles. It includes entertainment. So like Kennedy Space Center, where you're going through these events that transport you in your mind into space, like the Atlantis Space Shuttle exhibit, which is why I'm in space, is because I went through that. You have TV, or television programs like Away or and then you also have the museums and you have entertainment. I would bet that a very large percentage of the people that are in the space industry right now were Star Trek fans when they were younger. That is a part of space tourism, is taking them and putting them in that situation. And now you have other things like virtual reality and augmented reality that can transport people into space, give them that overview effect. And that is also considered to be space tourism.
I love that. And I think people need to sort of start to think about space tourism in this much bigger picture, and the opportunities are there for any company that wants to get involved in it in every single level. So we definitely encourage that. I want to go back to a bit about the entrepreneurship side of things, Stephan, with you. I think there is this kind of misconception that you have to be a multi-millionaire to be an entrepreneur. And obviously, when it comes to space, we're looking at the Elon Musks, the Richard Bransons, and the Jeff Bezoses of the world, and going, well, it's fine for them. They've got the money. Is that just the case? Is it the only way you can be an entrepreneur?
Well, absolutely not. No, again, like I mentioned, so it's traditionally was the billionaires that were funding their own companies, but because you don't have to build that entire system anymore, things are modular, things are interchangeable. You can make a business. And the key is, to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a business, not just an idea. You can make a business out of whatever that application is, of whatever gizmo you're going to make, or, we're talking about space tourism, whatever access to space you can get to give to mankind, you can do that without a lot of money. So it's just a matter of educating the investors. And that's the biggest challenge, is investors can't get it. Just like clean tech historically had a big capital upfront cost. And the only way clean tech companies were successful is where they're subsidized. So you need that public-private partnership to get the subsidies and to get the grants. But there are different opportunities, and definitely opportunities for entrepreneurs to be successful.
I think it all really starts with a business plan. And I want to throw this out to the entire panel. How does someone start with a business plan? I'm guessing the idea, but then what happens next? All well and good having a great idea, but how do you put it into motion? Izzy, do you want to start off with that?
I would like to say that getting marketing involved in the beginning process is important, because there's something called market fit, product fit, that if you're creating this wonderful gizmo, but there's no market for it, then you're not going to sell it. So it's very important to bring marketing in on the development of whatever product, and then work out how they're going to develop it. And a business plan is vital, even if it doesn't work. My first business plan, I worked with a company and we developed it. And at the end of the plan, it wasn't viable. It showed me that I wasn't going to actually be profitable. So walking through the steps of a business plan is vital to give you that education on what is involved in having a business.
Oh, and to add what Izzy's saying, because space is getting more mature and more accessible, you have customers. So you have to do your customer discovery. So you can't just have an idea and maybe a business around it. You have to be able to validate it with customers are going to pay money for whatever service you're going to offer.
Yeah, there's no secrets in business, whether it's space or barbershop. You literally could go to YouTube videos and learn how to do a business plan. And it's exactly what Izzy said. You just go through the process. You're going to figure out that you thought of something completely wrong. Somebody's going to give you some input, and you're going to figure out you missed something that was obvious. And it's going through the process that'll get you further and further along, until when you do, whether you need a budget for the marketing study or not, or you go out and you knock on doors, you're going to have a better idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because this is the problem. We all spin our wheels when we don't know what we're trying to accomplish. We think we know. But until we go through a process that's already established, you're not recreating a wheel, you're going to waste time and money, and effort.
I was going to say that I really liked what the panel has said, but the key thing, when we work with the companies, they have a concept. We say our NewSpace Igniter works with the company to take their concept, to product to sales. And a lot of the companies, when they first come in, they're trying to say that their product solves, world peace. And we try to really say, like, okay, take, first of all, understand your customers, who's out there, who needs this, and then go take, specific niche of a market, or like MVP, minimal viable product, and then expand. First, like, gain your niche area and then expand to that bigger market. But I was actually surprised that I thought we would be working with companies more to get them to equipment, to get them to demonstrations, to get them to workforce. And we do help navigate them through that. But a lot of them just really needed that early marketing help, and just we work with them to give their pitch and clarify, like, what are you selling? Because a lot of them, I have a tech background, and some of them come in and it's like, I don't know what you're selling. So we really just try to keep clarifying what it is they're trying to do and what problem are they trying to solve, and just sort of simplify and then go from there, expand from there.
We've had a couple of comments in the chat about incubators, which I think is a really great starting point for a lot of companies. But I also think, and we talked about this offline before we came on to this recording, about how much federal plays a role in that. Can any of you talk about sort of the programs that NASA has to offer, like the SBIR programs or the AFWorks and the SpaceWorks of the world, and how they can support a lot of these startups?
Yeah, they can support you in the same way that an investor can support you. You still have to make your pitch. You still have to have a good idea. They still have to have buy-in. And a lot of times we hear, especially like when we do panels like this, or when we hear webinars, whatever, as an entrepreneur, we get a bunch of buzzwords, and then we have to go look up those buzzwords, and they're not at all what we thought they were. So yeah, those programs, absolutely. But if you are 3 years into your idea and your business plan is that funding and nothing else, you have to talk to someone like Casie or Stephan, because you have to expand where you're going to get funding from.
Right. We try and help a lot of companies get to the SBIRs, or because those are non-dilutive funding. When we talk about the Igniter, we say we're trying to, first assess where they are, navigate them to the different resources they need, and then showcase them to the funding type sources. So it's whether it's a government contract like a SBIR, or investors, or sometimes we try and get them to the bigger companies that can fund them. But a lot of the investors love when the companies have gotten some of the SBIRs, because it sort of shows that they've made it to a certain point, showing that their tech or their concept or their product solves a problem. And then it also helps with that funding because it's non-dilutive funding. So
that might be a better way to approach that question: is, does one help you more with the other? And the answer is, yeah, absolutely. If you can get to some sort of SBIR, investors will be interested. That's more interested. Still might not be a good idea, but
And also too, there's other government programs that are non-space that can help you in your business. When I first developed either one of the firms that I did, I contacted the Chamber of Commerce's, and I also work with the small business development centers. There's a lot of tools and money that is there waiting for people to develop businesses, so they can help you and hold your hand during some of just the basic processes of building a business. Incubators are a great way as well. In the incubator that I was in, that's where I developed my business plan with the help of another business that was there. The businesses support each other, and marketing is a very good part of support for those businesses, because you need your message when you're going to these investors, and you need your brand, and you need a solid story that talks about what it is you're trying to do. If you do not have that good story about your business, and you don't have that professional brand, it's going to be really hard to get those investment dollars.
And to add to that, so one of the things as an entrepreneur I'd recommend that folks look for are really cool challenges. So there's a Beyond Earth Business Challenge that's coming up in November that's giving folks a global visibility for their product or service. And the things that those challenges offer are access to mentors, investors, and really big visibility for your product. And I've done that for Spacecom in the past. We're doing stuff as Jen in Saudi Arabia, in Africa, all around the world. ESA does a whole bunch of these things. So not just look for traditional investors, but put your company out there and make it visible beyond just the accelerator incubator. Again, no offense to the accelerators, incubators, but just get out there to the real world as close as possible.
At that point, extend beyond the incubator and also extend beyond the industry. You might have a product that is already applicable to the medical industry. And so, you know, don't discount that just yet, you know. Now you want to be in aerospace, but the money's over here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're all really great points. And Jay, I will get to your question in a minute about space logistics, but I wanted to go to the one that just popped into the chat because it felt really relevant to what we're talking to right now about those that are a little bit shy of marketing. Now, marketing doesn't always have to be about putting yourself out there. Marketing is establishing your brand identity. Izzy, can you talk a little bit further to that, please?
It is creating your business, a personality for your business and who it is, because people do business with the people that they know and trust. So it is important that you develop that personality that is consistent, has trust signals. But I am going to tell you that real people do business with real people, and you're going to have to get out there. And one of the tools that I learned, because I was a very bad introvert, I know it's hard to believe, but I was a very bad one. And Toastmasters helped me a lot about learning how to speak impromptu, learning how to actually give presentations. And I recommend that because it's not a natural gift for us to go out there and meet people and to stand on stage. So you need those tools if you're going to get your business out there.
And I want to give you a virtual hug, Izzy, because I'm so with you. I also run an investment group. And the thing we looked at when we look at what's investable is who's selling for that company, who's doing the marketing, who's comfortable getting the message out, who's comfortable closing the deals. So at the end of the day, no matter what it is, people try to equate investing to horse racing. It's not. It's people working with people. And that's so important to stress.
I will ask though, Casie, stealth mode is quite normal in the space industry, right? But it doesn't mean that they're not establishing what they're trying to do. They're just not ready to talk about it too widely yet. Can you talk a little bit about some of the companies you've worked with in stealth mode?
I know Crossbow was like that. They're sort of like a new launch company, and for about a year we knew what they were doing, but we couldn't talk about it because they, you know, they're waiting to get different investors. There's competitors, so you just have to be careful. I know we end up signing non-disclosure agreements with a lot of our companies and have to be careful not to share their tech until they're ready, you know. And, you know, there's competitors out there. And I think, though, there's a lot more collaboration. But I think companies are more and more open to collaborate because it helps each other. Like that's what we found with our NewSpace Igniter, that the companies really have been collaborating with each other and learning and going off and partnering on some of these contract opportunities. And so that's been really cool to see, too.
Benjamin, what about you? I was going to say, I'm sure you must come across a lot of companies that come to you and say, we want to establish ourselves where you are, but we can't tell anybody about us yet. You know, how do you deal with those situations? Are you able to support them still?
Yes. And here's what I do. I try to get them to focus on what's real, right? They have an idea, but let's be honest, it's not unique. There is some element of it that's proprietary, and you got to definitely protect that. But we fall on this NDA as if it's kind of like all protecting. I mean, once your idea is out, it's out. It doesn't matter if there's an NDA or not. So you lose a lot of opportunities by being a little too upfront that way, and not being as open as you could be. You're not selling yourself enough. You're not networking enough. You're a little bit too fragile, and you don't have a reason to be. But for those little elements where you really need to protect yourself, you know, you should be careful for that. But yeah, and how do you figure that out? You figure that out with a patent attorney. You know, like there is something real or there's nothing real, you know, and if it's a really good idea, these things are hard enough when you don't know what the idea is. So if you hear somebody that's got a good idea, they're already 10 steps ahead of you. You're just going to start out. And unless you're like a wealthy individual who's going to take ideas anyway because they got the money to just do it, you're not going to be able to capitalize on a great idea you hear. It's too hard.
And I'd like to touch on the stealth mode. That's one of the challenges I talk about early in the book, is because, a lot of companies think they got to be completely stealth. Well, when we first went to space and we were going against Russia during the Apollo program, we educated the American people on what rockets were, on what satellite, on what we were trying to do without giving away any secrets, because we were in a race with Russia. So there's parts that you can educate. There's a brand that you can develop without giving away your secrets, because we do not want to do that, but we still want to develop those relationships. And if you have something that does satellites, well, you can still educate about what a satellite is, and not give away that you have this super secret propulsion program. So you still have to get out there, and you just have to do it carefully.
Absolutely. That's going to bring me to one of the questions we had earlier from Jay. And he says he's coming from a military background in logistics, and given the rapid advancement and commercialization of what you say is the primary what do you say is the primary challenges in the field of space logistics? And are there any gaps in expertise or technology that need to be addressed in that area? Has anybody got any kind of expertise when it comes to space logistics?
The biggest hurdle of space logistics is that the materials, the data, the workforce, all of it is applicable to other industries that are already doing things that are making them money. So if you're making chips, you're going to try to sell to Apple. You're not going to sell to Blue Origin. So yeah, logistically, you got to figure out your mass. Where is it that you can really capably make money? Yeah.
Anyone got anything to add to that?
Well, and a lot of crossover happens too. So yeah, you may be doing the chips and you may be selling to Apple, but if you're wanting to migrate into space, which a lot of companies are, like Tide is migrating into space. Right now, they're learning how to wash laundry up in the ISS without as much water. Well, that technology comes back down here into the consumer market. So just don't silo yourself into one industry. Look at where your technology can maybe go into the medical field to give you that money that you need, those customers that you need in order to be able to do the space field. So you got to have a viable product that is making money. You cannot rely strictly on grants.
Oh, sorry. And tapping into the ISS that as you mentioned, historically was called CASIS. Now it's the ISS National Lab. If you have a great project or an idea or a business that you want to try to put up in space, they do an amazing job at giving you pretty much almost free up mass to get to the space station so that you can run your project. That is just groundbreaking, earth-shattering kind of thing. Historically, I worked with middle schoolers. They got their project up to space. So I'm all about inspiration and inspiring the next generation workforce. So there's so many avenues that kids can get involved in getting their project up to space. And that's where it starts, I believe.
Absolutely. And going back to the question about logistics, I would say that there's a lot of companies that are trying to figure this out right now. People focus so much on the upstream of the launch side of things. The downstream always gets forgotten, and there are definitely gaps in the market. I would say do your research, find out what companies you're looking for. If it's a particular area of the country, go see what your competition is. And that's really how you establish yourself in that area. And I'm also going to remind everyone to put questions in the chat, because I think I saw a couple of hands coming up. It's just a little bit easier to keep the flow going, to make sure you have that. And I think we've got another one coming in about using AI to maximize mass of payloads. I don't think it was a particular question, but I think there's a really good opportunity to talk about new businesses coming through, new ideas in the space industry, and how people can implement them. AI is a perfect example of that, but I think Earth observation is one that goes across not just the space industry, but non-traditional space companies as well. What have you found with companies thinking about the space industry and bringing it into their business plan that are non-traditional space companies? Are they looking at how they can use Earth observation or artificial intelligence data coming from space to really help establish themselves? Does anybody want to start with that, answering that one first? I can see Stephan nodding, so I'm going to throw to you first.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yes, absolutely. I mean, you would think when we did the Earth Observation Challenge in Africa, we had entrants from almost every country in Africa submit software apps that dealt with space data to do poaching detection, farm food protection, those kind of things. Free data from space. How cool is that? Where you can actually make decisions to do whatever, to produce food or to protect your animals. So it's there, and it's growing.
I would like to touch on spin-off technology, and it's available. So NASA is, when it goes and it develops all this technology, a lot of it they have available for American companies to use. So if you're thinking about going into space, talk to NASA and their spin-off technologies and see what technology they have that they're just going to give you to develop in a commercial opportunity.
Benjamin, have you got anything to add to that?
I do have something to add to it. Here's the thing about AI. It doesn't solve problems for you. It just picks out things that are already there and it kind of puts them together and it condenses it for you. So if you can literally have conversations with AI software right now where you're talking with someone who's as intelligent or more intelligent than you are. And you can, while you're driving, you can do that. So if we're talking about how other industries are going to affect, yeah, AI is like having a super networked individual already in your circles. You can throw ideas, bounce ideas off of them, and they're really good at that. With regard to other industries, you have to set up the chess pieces before you need them. So you have to create the network in supply chain, in logistics, in whatever you think your day-to-day struggle is going to be, figure out who's already got that figured out. Use LinkedIn to get that warm introduction, and have a 15-minute chat with that person. You're going to figure out that, yeah, this is so much easier than trying to figure it out on my own.
Absolutely.
And now you have a network partner. Yeah.
Always a great idea. And I love the fact you pushed to LinkedIn. I'd recommend everyone to go back to our first presentation where Izzy talked about LinkedIn and how important it is for networking. Casie, I know you've worked with RS21. I think they're a perfect example of how they pivoted into the space industry and they use AI. Are you able to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so that's what they had an AI, like a predictive analysis for cancer patients. And then they pivoted. What was really cool is they took some data from a satellite system and from the Space Systems Command. They gave them some old satellite data from a satellite that had failed. And they were able to, within days or even hours, just figure out what the problem was and where the exact issue was, where it had taken months from the space system group to go figure out like why that satellite had failed. So it's really cool. They're doing a lot now to get on board with a number of satellites because they can predict also now when some of the errors might be happening. So I think that they're going to do really well with that.
Absolutely. I've got one last question for the panel, and it's coming from Nelly, who's asking if anyone can speak to bottlenecking when it comes to private companies utilizing the ISS for human-tended research. I don't know if that's a misconception. I don't know if any of you have got any experience in that, but do you think it's being dominated by certain companies? Do you think it's limited, or do you think it's going to start to open up when we start to get more of these commercial space stations going up? I don't know if anyone can speak to that.
I can speak to that. From what I understand, the rides are not full. So it's just a matter of putting together a solid business plan and working with the ISS National Lab, assuming you're contacting from the US, and putting together a strong case and negotiating with them.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to add to that? No,
that's just the long and the short of it is that I don't think there's a bottleneck because there's just not enough companies that can do the things that need to be done for these launchers to even consider. Yeah.
I would say quite the opposite. I'm seeing at the moment there isn't so much of a bottleneck. Bottlenecking was something that we really were experiencing back in the 90s and the early 2000s. And with the rise of commercial companies, the rideshare program now is a perfect example of that. Things that normally would have to go through suborbital testing are now going straight to orbit because it's cheaper and it's easier to go to. And I think when we start to see all these commercial space companies that building these space stations like VAST, like Axiom, yeah, we're going to see these incredible space stations going up there that will just open up opportunities for so many more people so they can see that there is an opportunity there and it's starting to grow. I think when it comes to the ISS, it's still slightly problematic, but I think people are starting to think outside the box. You don't have to go up and do your experiment on the ISS. There's now Virgin Galactic offering 4 minutes on their microgravity, Zero G offer 30 seconds. Sometimes your experiment only needs 30 seconds. You don't have to think about it going up to the ISS for long periods of time. So I do think we're seeing more and more opportunities to open up there. Izzy?
And digital twinning is a thing that is coming about too, so where you're able to take your product into a virtual environment and use the data that has been collected and see if it will work and be effective first. So it's not necessarily having to do it physically. And there's also other tools on the ISS that you can tap into.
Yeah, and some really great companies that are now thinking about shelving that you can look into. Redwire and Space Tango both come to mind. I'm going to give you all 30 seconds to give us a quick roundup of how people can get in contact with you and find out more about your different organizations.
Casie, Anglada DeRaad. My email is Casie@NewSpaceNexxus.org. And again, please think about going to our website, NewSpaceNexxus.org, and joining the NewSpace Alliance, either through your corporation, your company, or the individual for help with workforce placement.
Excellent. Benjamin.
Yeah, the easiest way to contact me is through LinkedIn, Benjamin Hernandez at Arizona Spaceport Alliance.
Stephan?
If you want to take a ride to Puerto Rico, I'll be in San Juan next month with the Global Entrepreneurship Congress focusing on space in Latin American countries. If you can't make it to San Juan, drop me a note on LinkedIn. I'm Captain Stephan Reckie. Thank you.
Perfect. Izzy?
And again, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the social platform for space. So that is where we all tend to congregate. And look for my books on Amazon and listen to my podcast at spacemarketingpodcast.com.
Yeah, I was going to say LinkedIn is definitely the best way to reach out to most people. I really recommend it when it comes to networking, but I also recommend you send a note with your ad. I get so many people adding me on LinkedIn. I don't know where they've come from. I'm very good at normally trying to keep an eye on the names that come up here, but some of you don't always have your full name. So when these names come up, I don't know who you are. So send me a note, say hi. I'm happy to help network and reach out to people and put you in touch with those that can answer it. So on that note, I'm going to hand it back to Steve Wolfe, who's going to close us out for today from the Global Spaceport Alliance. Thank you so much to everyone on the panel.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Alice and the panel. That was what an extraordinary conversation. And just a couple of observations. I couldn't agree more that networking is so important in this process. And the one thing that occurred to me in this conversation around companies that are seeking funding and are starting out. If you're an individual that's just trying to break into the space sector, you don't have to have a startup, right? You can actually look to, startups are one opportunity or an avenue where jobs are available. And actually, if you startups can tend to be a little bit more flexible in terms of bringing folks on if you have talent and capability. And willing to put in a little sweat equity. Those are great opportunities. And so thank you all for that discussion. I will be joining Stephan in Puerto Rico, in fact, where we will be having a panel that will consist of GSA members. And we're going to talk about how the government can help to stimulate entrepreneurship in the space sector. And I don't know, Stephan, we are going to also have a hackathon during that time. Is that something that's relevant to this audience, you think?
Yeah, if you can make it down to Puerto Rico, we're having a space hackathon for 3 days. Yeah. That's going to be an in-person thing, unfortunately.
Very good. Thanks, Stephan. Okay, next week is our last workshop for this series this year. It's right on top of where the Spaceport America Cup begins. It is on, that workshop will be on space career opportunities now and in the future. It's on June 15th. You're going to use the same Zoom link to get in there. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. And thank you all, and have a great rest of your weekend. Bye now.